Um, One of the things I forgot, and I don't remember if it was our Ball State friends or somebody else, but you told me to do a call list. So I want to show you how to do a call list out of a query, and then we can go on to the applications. So a call list, I'll call it telecounseling call list. I'll probably call it a few things during this. But a call list is made up of two parts. It's made up of a form and it's made up of a query. So it's kind of marrying the two parts together into this call list. Remember when I said earlier on when we were first talking about Slate is the basics of Slate are fields, prompts, queries, forms, and deliver. So if you can do those 5 things, you can do anything. Now we're going to marry 2 of the things together. We're going to marry forms together with a query. So a call list, and I'm actually going to pull up a knowledge base article just so you can see it. So the knowledge base article, I have my hot list of things that I always touch on in my folder here, but it's called Telerecruiting in Slate, Configuring Call Forms and Call Lists. If you follow these directions, you will be able to do a call list, but I'll show you how to do it. So Telerecruiting in Slate, configuring call forms and call lists is the knowledge base article. So a call list is made up of 2 things. 1, a form. So if we create a form, I'm going to create, I'm going to call it TBR. I'm going to skip over a lot of the best practices here. Normally I would put it into a folder. I do a lot of things. I'm just going to really create something very basic. So sort of ignore what I'm doing here. So we're going to have a form. Actually, let me show you what I'm doing here. If I hit Control and click on anything in a form, I can hit either Control Shift or just Control and click, and I can select multiple boxes, and I can delete multiple things at a time. Makes life a little bit easier. That works in a lot of different areas. So even in forms, like if I click on a lot of these forms, I can hit the gear, and I can refolder it, change the title, anything that I'd like. So fun, helpful hit there. So I'm going to create a very basic form real quick. That is just going to be, I'm going to throw an interaction selector in there. Just call it interaction. And I'm going to throw a text box, or maybe not, maybe a paragraph box. Let's call it notes. All right, so I have this form called call list form for TBR. It's a person scoped form. And I think that's all I need to do for it. I think that's all I need to do. All right, so I built this form here. Now I'm going to go to a query, and I'm just going to use my Matt Saucy query here. And I'm going to edit my query. And if I have it saved as a retrieve only new record since query was last run. So if I have it saved as that, I get a little box over here called configure call list. So let's just say I love my query. This is what I want to use as my call list. It's people who have inquired within the past 24 hours or something like that. I can hit configure call list, and I can add a form to it. What the heck did I call it? Call list TBR. So I can add my call list to it, and I can put down instructions. My instructions could be maybe a script. Hello, this is Matt. Please. So maybe that's my script that I'm going to put in my instructions. Now, since I now married my form to my query, and I've configured my call list, I've added my script. If I go to my main page of my query, I get this button called Share Call List. So I can click on this URL, and I can send this to anybody with Slate access, and now I get my call list. So I have my script at the top. So hello, this is Matt. Please answer my questions. Love TBR. So I can put my script in here, and anytime I hit Fetch Next, you'll see my run history, but my fetch next, there are no additional people. Let me add into my query an additional person. I get rid of Alexander. So 1,100 or 1,100 people. Let's fetch next. Sorry, one best practice is in your query, you want your fetch number to be a low number. So limit rows. I'm just going to say 3 right now because I don't want to export in my call list 1,100 people. I may only want 3 people at a time every time I hit fetch. So I go and refresh. So out of my total remaining, I have 1,011 people. My fetch limit is 3. When I hit fetch next, it's going to pick the next 3 people in my query. So it's going to give me information. Now, ideally, if I were to set this up in real time, I would want their mobile phone number. I would want information about them, all of that. But I could click on their record and I can see some information about them. Again, I would have their phone number. I would have, items that they're missing, whatever the point of the phone call is, I would have exported here. If I hit submit form, then it brings up my interaction and my notes section that I just created on my form. So I can either have my end user pick the interaction code, all of this, or if I had a little bit more time, I would build it, but I could predetermine what those interactions are. So I could put that on my form as a static, and then they can enter whatever comments they like. Spoke with student, awesome kid. Whatever notes I want to do here and submit. So now, if I'm the counselor, I'm calling these people, I know green, I already called that person. I move on to the next person, click submit form, add my interaction, phone call, maybe this is an outgoing call, whatever notes I want to make on that interaction, and submit. So now I'm going through my call list and it's pulling all those people. I can also go, and if I look at Kenneth Higgins here, I can go to his timeline and I can see that the form was submitted. And these are my notes on the person. So this is where your call list is going to be really beneficial because you may create a call list that says, if my staff assigned equals current user, so now Matt runs it, I only get my people. If Sally runs it, she gets her person. If Heather runs it, she gets her people in the query. So it's filtering based on staff assigned equals current user, in theory, if we were to build it. And it's pulling all the people that meet the filter criteria, like give me everybody who's inquired within the past 24 hours. So now every 24 hours or every day, maybe I open this query, I fetch next, and I just call the people that I need to call.
Have you worked with people integrating that with Slate Voice so it launches the call?
Yes, so you can integrate it with Slate Voice. That's something that on your query, is it your form or your query? Your query. If I edit properties, if I configure call list and hit enable Slate Voice, I'd have to tie it to an account and who my recipient is. So my recipient is probably last name, something like that.
I feel like at Summit,
It would be phone number, sorry.
he showed that because I have a voicemail recorded as a snippet tied into the form, but it won't auto launch upon no pickup. So you have to sit there, wait for it to ring out, wait for the voicemail box to pick up, and then click play snippet. And then you have to wait for the snippet to play before you can exit and go to your next call. So I feel like 2 features he covered in Summit were it auto playing and then it auto running your next person. And have you found a way for either of those functions to work?
I'll be honest, I haven't gotten that deep into it. Most of my schools aren't using Slate Voice in that way. I have one school that's using Slate Voice, but very sparingly. It's an interesting one. So for those of you who are not using Slate Voice, so Slate Voice is a function of Slate where it can call using landline phone numbers directly from Slate, and I can use my headset to talk with the student rather than calling them on my phone and going that route. There is a cost to Slate Voice. I think it's a penny a minute, 10 cents a minute. I forget how much it is, but there's a cost involved, so be aware of that. Now, what Vol State is talking about is There's an automated process that you can actually send a recorded message automatically to these people. I think
It can be your own voice, like you record it and then your recruiters can have one per population. So it's not a robocall again.
Yeah, there's there's the robocall thing, but this is, oh, the person's not answering.
yep, send this static message.
Yeah.
Record a minute message every time. Which is only helpful if I don't have to wait for the minute message to play out.
Right.
And I might as well say.
Their 30 seconds of music or whatever they have on their voicemail, and then now you have to do the minute of your message. I don't have an easy answer for that, but I'd be excited to play with
That's
that.
okay. If you ever come across one, just email Ball State. Let me know. But I was very excited at Summit. I just haven't seen that be the case.
And also, if, let's say, the power goes out.
Yeah.
Or something right in the middle of that. Or I just don't get done with that list of people. Let's say it's 5 people. I get 3 of them. I move on, but I click fetch next.
Mhm.
And so I've got 3 people that I didn't call. Can I see the 3 people that I didn't call? Can I click in here? Yeah, so can I click on the prior?
You can. So yep, you can go to prior runs of this and say, oh, I never called Alexander Hamilton. I'm going to call him because he's not green. But these people, they're not marked as green, but we may want an export to say like call date or something like that, or last interaction date. You might want to export that.
Very last thing, and then I'm quiet. Would you mind taking the second and showing us how to pre-populate the interaction that we want on the form? I know you said it could be done.
Yes. Yeah, let me show you that real quick.
We have a couple of instances where we would like to be able to do that.
Yeah, so right now I just use the interaction widget. Ideally, I like the interaction widget, but it leaves the end user to control what you probably don't want them to control. So what I would do instead of adding the interaction widget, I would add separate fields. So I would add a field that is interaction code. And instead of giving the option of all these interaction codes, this is where overriding system prompts is helpful, because maybe I only want them to see phone call interactions and nothing else. So I only want them to see this, and maybe I want to default it to outgoing call. Just gonna write code here and we'll see it in a second. So in fact, let's actually even get rid of this and only default it. The only option is outgoing call, because that's obviously what it is. We're making outgoing calls. So let's save that. Part of every interaction, you have to have a user, a date. If you don't have a date, it defaults to the second you fill out the form, a code, and a subject. Same thing with subject. We would want to add in a standard subject, because we don't want them typing whatever we want in or whatever they want in. We want to control things. I'm a control freak. So we're going to say interaction subject, and we're going to put in a default value of, this is a phone call. I don't know. And it could be any type of thing. It could be like, this is a default value of acceptance phone call or something like that. And let's also add in I'll just throw a user in here. Interaction user. And default value, just going to make it myself. CDM here. Save.
Put a value there. Would it default to the user that submitted the form?
It would.
Okay.
So I'm just going to throw that in just for argument's sake. And then the last thing I'm going to throw in is private comments, which is a paragraph text. And it's interaction. Make sure it's private comments, not public comments. I hate the fact that public comments even exists. Comments. Now, so I put basically everything that's in the interaction widget in its own fields here. Now, the last couple of things that I could do is I can make some of these read only. So then I can't even change it as the end user. So if I hit read only on all of this, I did it for subject. What the heck, let's do it for this. So the only thing that they can change is the comments, which you might want. Now, if I go to my query, click on Darcy here, submit form. I didn't hide that. Active. Got to get rid of the widget there. All right, so now if I go to Darcy and submit form, phone call outgoing is defaulted. So it's always going to be an outgoing phone call. It's always going to be this value. I can't type over it. It's always going to be me as the user. Probably don't want to default to one person, but in this case I am. And now I can type in my comments of just typing comments and submit.
When you had the separate notes box, that was probably saving with the form. Is that correct?
It was saving on the form, right? I just made that a form field. But now if I go to Darcy's record, I can see on her timeline that there's an outgoing call from TBR. And I can see that it's staying standard as an outgoing call. The subject is this is an outgoing call. It's by me. And then my comments are Darcy's comments. So that's where I would build my form with individual fields, but make things defaulted and read only. So then the end user is not changing it. That also helps with querying. So if you're running a query, it's almost impossible, any kind of system, to run a really good filter on a text field. But if you're running a query, but you're standardizing your subject line, which is a text field, now you can easily search for that value because you're saying, give me everybody where it's an outgoing call and the subject is, this is a phone call. So now I can search for everybody where that is the actual text of the subject line. So that's a cool way to do it. So again, we're minimizing end user error and we're only allowing them to enter data into one field, which is the comments field, which is what we would want.
So, and your green only shows up when, but you probably could bake into the query something that says if they've received this interaction previously, then
on your end or
Because our current call list is just a query and it's, you drop off when that interaction is logged. So give me everybody who meets these criteria who hasn't already been called. But if this execution mode never pulls them again, then that part probably isn't necessary.
Yeah, so one of my filters in here would be filter interaction code does not equal outgoing call and subject equals this is a phone call or something like that. So if they don't have that interaction, now you would want to be careful. You might want to say they don't have this interaction code within the past 6 months because they could have had it 3 years ago. They would never get pulled in.
Yeah.
So you'd want to just throw some.
With our readmits quickly.
Yes. So yeah, you might want to say, give me everybody who's inquired within the past 24 hours and they don't have this interaction code within the past 7 days or something like that.
Thank you.
Yeah. But that's where I really like locking things down and making it as controlled by me as possible. So end users aren't making mistakes. They're not typing in this is a phone call, lowercase, or spelling this wrong, or whatever. You're controlling what you're actually storing as a subject.
It was an easy sell with our administration, like just the time you save not having to dial the number. Because when you launch it from Slate Voice, it starts ringing. You have a headset in, go. You don't have to dial, all the digits. But then you also have the time of not leaving the voicemail. If that feature ever actually could get it to work, it would save a ton of time on call lists.
Yeah, let me show you what that kind of looks like. We'll throw in mobile phone here. Mobile phone, configure call list. Let's say we're going to enable Slate Voice. I'm going to hopefully not do this so I don't get charged. Person mobile phone is my recipient. Save. If I were to go into, where's my call list? Fresh.
It's a shame the green doesn't stick.
Yeah, right. Let's fetch next. Grab another group. Of course, none of these people have mobile phone numbers because it's a test instance. But if they had a mobile phone number, I would be able to call them directly from this. I could click on their phone number. Let me do one thing because now it's going to bother me. Alexander. gets a contact of, come on, contact. Oh, he does have a mobile phone number. Come on. I'd have to do too much cleanup. But I could just click on the phone number right here. It would call through my headset and it would call Alexander. And actually, surprisingly enough, I think that's actually his personal cell phone number. If you're interested. All right. So that's configuring a call list. So call lists are super cool. The other thing, well, yeah, so that's your call list section. So utilize that, create call lists, think strategically about what are your calling campaigns and when you're calling people. My example that I always use is somebody inquires within 24 hours, it might be your institutional policy that we have to have a touch point within 24 hours after they inquire. So if they inquire, fill out any inquiry form within the past 24 hours, they automatically get a phone call. Accept is also a good one. If they've been accepted within the past 24 hours or within the past 7 days or whatever your criteria is, they get a phone call to say, congratulations on your acceptance. And then you build your forms specifically for those specific calls that you'll end up doing. All right, let's jump into applications. So I've said this a few times, I'll say it again. Most things in Slate are queries, forms, and question or no? Okay, cool. Most things in Slate are queries, forms, and deliver messages. Same thing goes for applications. Applications are some setup behind the scenes and they're forms. So, and some queries behind the scenes as well. So the first thing I want to talk a little bit about are periods and rounds. This is where there's a lot of confusion on what the heck are periods, what the heck are rounds, and what should we be using as our periods and rounds. There are two schools of thought. The old school of thought with Technolutions was you have one period, one round per term that you're recruiting for. Well, originally it was your periods are, I think they originally had it as like early decision, regular decision, rolling admission as your periods, and then your rounds were 2024, 2025, 2026, and so on. That's changed a little bit in Technolutions' mind, and it's not what I recommend. My recommendation is different because it's going to make your annual cycle prep so much easier. If you were to have a separate period and separate round for each year, like Technolutions originally recommended, it's going to make your cycle prep longer and it's going to be a lot more work for you. My recommendation, Jackson, I'm going to pick on you guys. Just because we did it, that's not what I want. Just because we just did it for you. So my recommendation, and I don't think I have to log in, so I might have to. My recommendations would be keeping your periods and rounds as limited as possible. So my recommendation is 2 periods, inactive and whatever you want to name your active one. So I named it Jackson State Community College, mainly because if I were to go into my application and when I hit new application, you get your drop down here normally of your periods. So it's only going to show active periods. So my inactive one, and I'm impersonating right now, so you get special powers and you can see everything. But my standard would just be Jackson State Community College. So I named my active period Jackson State Community College. So it's just a reminder of who the heck am I applying for. My round, we'll talk about rounds deeper in a minute, is application for admission. So 1 active period, 1 active round at all times, 1 inactive period, and 1 inactive round at all times. That way, you're on a yearly basis, you're not creating your 2023 round, your 2024 round, your 2025 round, and redoing all your work every year. The nice thing about this is, let's say we're done recruiting for fall 2023. Let's say 2023 is over, we're done with it. We can run a query and say, give me everybody in the active round that is an applicant term of 2023, fall 2023. Take all of those people, roll them to the inactive round, and now I've just taken all my old people out of the round, and my round is still available for new people to apply. So I'm not shutting it down for a day or two or a week and opening it up a week later or anything like that. It works really well for rolling admissions like you guys are. So one round, one period. Now you're just taking people out of the active round, putting them in the inactive round. The other nice thing about that is when you're doing your querying, all you have to do is say, give me everybody who has an active round and an active period. So if they're in the active round, you're pulling them into the query. If they're in an inactive round, now you can start filtering a little bit more. You say, give me everybody that's in the inactive round. That's a fall 2023. So now you can query off last year's applicants, or give me everybody who's a inactive round of fall 2022. And now you're keeping your buckets a little bit separate rather than keeping them separate within the rounds and periods. So let me show you what that looks like on the Jackson side. So when we built it, we built two periods. Jackson State Community College, which is our active one, put a default dummy year in there, doesn't matter, and it's active. And an inactive one, which we're just going to roll people as they expire, as the terms expire into the inactive period. Same thing with the rounds. If we look at our rounds, same thing. We have application for admission, which is our active period, and our inactive, which is our active round and our inactive round. So again, we're taking people out of the active round as they phase out of that year and then moving them into the inactive round. It's going to save you a lot of work rather than copying the round, adding a new year, changing all your data within your fields and prompts and all of that. So it's going to keep yourself a little bit cleaner. Yes, sir.
Real quick, normally applications, there's like that limit of one per period around. Are you going to, do you turn that off?
Yeah, so it really depends on your institution. If you are allowing somebody to apply multiple times for the year, you can allow multiple applications per period and per round. I would say allow multiple applications, and this is where it gets very school specific. So that's why I'm trying to watch what I say here, because I don't want to recommend it for one and not recommend it for another. I like allowing multiple applications just because I may want to apply now for fall 2024. So we're in now, yeah. So I may be interested in applying for fall 24, but you may also have institutionally open up fall 25 at the same time. And I may want to just go in and apply for fall 25 as now my rank 1 application. So I'll have two applications. I'll have a rank 1 fall 24 and a rank 1 fall 25. Let's say fall 24 recruitment's over. I have this application for fall 24 still sitting out there and it's incomplete. I'm never completing it. You would just take that, roll it over to the inactive period, because you want to track that I applied for fall 24 and I'm inactive. I never finished it. It's just sitting out there. So you still want to count that as an application for that term, even though I may never have completed my application. But you also want to allow my fall 25 to be available to apply for.
So the hiccup we tend to run into is that students will like apply for like fall or something, and they go, shoot, I should have applied for summer. And then they go through and they need to add a second application. But if they're both still not setting in an active, they can, okay.
They can. And that's just institutionally where you want to have that discussion of, if somebody applies for fall and then they go back in and personally themselves apply for spring, what do you want to happen? Maybe you want a query on the back end to alert somebody to say their rank 1 app is fall, but their rank 2 app is fall, but their rank 1 app now is spring. Call this person. This person seems confused. So that may be a call list that you may want to create. Maybe something on your data processing side to have a flag pop up to say, hey, this is an oddity, something's going on. Or this person has more than 3 applications in an active round. raise the red flag. Something's going on here. This person's just applying willy-nilly. So that's just where you might want to have some of those red flags.
You don't mean an actual red flag or an actual something turning red, right?
You could have a portal for maybe your recruiters or something like that that pops up. You could have something on the student record that pops up. But typically I would just do a query, like a catch query, to say these are people with more than one application in an active period in an active round on this certain date.
But you still have to manage your terms, right? So the terms that are available for application, you would just be managing that on the application itself, or like you said previously, using categories of some kind.
Exactly.
But you'd be, since a field can only, or a prompt can only be in one category, then if you were using your term across multiple things, you'd run into a problem, right? If you needed a category for more than one purpose of the term.
So that's where, let me open up my prompt list again. So now we're kind of going full circle and looking at our prompts. So
You always wind up back with the prompts kicking yourself.
potentially. So let's look at our term prompts again. And that's why I like the name of current app and inquiry and current inquiry. Because in my category of current inquiry, I'm showing this on all my inquiry forms, along with anything that's in my current app and inquiry. But on my app, I'm only showing things in the category of current app / inquiry. So I may still be accepting inquiries for summer 25, but I'm not yet accepting applications for summer 25 yet, until I change this to current app / inquiry in my category.
Okay.
So I think personally, it makes managing your app a lot easier, because now the only thing that you're managing is your prompt list of your terms, rather than going into each app page and adjusting prompt logic and things like that on an annual basis. Makes your overall management a lot easier. So that's my recommendation. Can you still have multiple rounds? Absolutely. It's not going to hurt anything. It's just going to make your overall cycle prep a little bit longer. Brian says a lot of times he's lazy. He doesn't want to do extra work. I agree. Try not to make extra work for yourself if at all possible. So I like the active, inactive rounds, with the caveat of I may add an extra round for specific populations like DE. DE people are special. We all know that. They apply very differently. I may, and I have done it for schools, I don't have a good example right now, where I have application for admission round, and then also an inactive DE application round. And by doing my inactive DE application round, I might do a, I forget what they call it, a URL specific application, where you say that if you're applying for DE, you have to go to this URL. You can't do the /apply URL. So you go to the DE specific URL and apply to DE that way. So that would be my only caveat of adding a different round for those DEs. But same logic would go with that, where they would go into the DE round, and then I'd move them to the inactive when they're no longer being recruited, or my application term has expired. To underline that side of it, there is an article out there of,
How would you set a custom URL on?
yeah, let me show you. Direct round URL, that's what the article's called. Thought I had it saved to mine. Gonna save that. So there's an article called Direct Round URL. Normally, if I'm applying, I would go to apply/dscc.edu/apply and go to my thing, and I'd apply into the active round. If I'm doing a direct round URL, that's where I would go to apply.dscc.edu/apply, and then SR equals, and then whatever my round ID is my GUID for that specific round. So if I'm looking at my rounds, it would be this. So I would take this GUID and put it at the end of the SR equals. So then for my DEs, I would say, if you're applying for DE, go to this URL and maybe have it as a special button on my website where it's like, if you're applying for DE, click here. If you're applying for regular admission, click here. That way it gives the student the ability to apply for DE because maybe they're a senior, they want to take DE courses, but they also want to apply as a freshman. So they'll go actually into two separate URLs, the direct round URL for the DE program and the apply slash or the slash apply URL to apply for admission. They'll still have the same portal, the same login and all of that, but they're going to two separate locations. So take a look, especially for the DE program, this is really where I built it a lot. Take a look at the configuring the direct round URL.
You do that, are you only able to make the direct round URL go to the GUID? Are you able to make it like a portal with a different URL?
It can only go to the GUID, but you can mask it to whatever.
How do you mask the GUID? I was fighting with us last week.
Yeah, so let me show you. So let's say if I were to build a portal, let's say, yeah.
Or if this is too much of a sign out, I'll just harass you later, so.
Or ask me later on it.
Yeah.
But I would build a separate, I would build an application management portal. And on my application management portal, it would say, if you're applying for freshmen, click here, or log in here or create an account here. If you're applying for DE, click here. And if hopefully they know that they're applying for DE.
Trust them.
I don't either. But if they're applying for DE, then they click that button and then apply for DE that way.
Get you
And
like,
then on the back end too, let's say they apply as a freshman, they're like, oh, I want a DE. And they're like, okay. Then all you have to do is go onto their app. Does this work? No, I need an app. Okay, I'm playing in Jackson. Don't kill me, Jackson. So all you would have to do is go to their app and edit app details and just change their round to the DE to make it a little bit easier for yourself. So, but you're right, students typically don't know what they want. They think they know what they want. But it's a lot easier, especially for the people who have multiple rounds open at a time, where you may have fall 24 open because it's June, let's say. So it's this coming June, you have fall 24 open, but you've also now already opened fall 25. Instead of the student looking and having to think, what's 24 versus 25? Which one do I pick? They're just saying active application round. So they're picking their application for admission. And then in their application, that's where then you can limit it and say, if you're applying for fall 24, put fall 24, fall 25. So you're now storing it on the application and not storing it at the round. So it makes it a lot simpler. So I'm a proponent for one period, one round that are active and then have the inactive ones also there.
Thank you.
Good. You like it?
Yes.
Okay. It's going to make your life so much easier. It's just a pain, and I've done it for a couple schools where they have all these rounds and all these periods, and it just gets confusing and messy. So I'm a proponent for that. All right. So let me get out of Jackson so they don't kill me. They like me. All right. So now we have we talked about periods, we talked about rounds. Now we're going to go into the application editor. So this is where if you do a direct round URL, there's some setup that you'd have to do, but then you'd see a separate like apply/DE section under here where you'll see a different round. But within your application editor, this is where you'll see all your forms that are. Let me go to a live version. You know what, Jackson, you guys are my guinea pigs today.
Absolutely.
See, I got permission. Look at that.
We could have off.
It means I owe you, right? You're going to hold this over my head.
Oh, definitely.
So now we have, if we go into App Editor, we can see all the forms that are associated with our application. We just got notification from Technolutions, I think you might have as well, that they're changing their standard forms that they're delivering to new clients. So it's not going to affect any of you unless you haven't implemented Slate yet, but they're getting rid of the ACA, the ref, and they're going to be more customizable forms. So just so you know that that's going to be out there. Not going to affect you, but you may see it in like a clean slate environment or something like that. But all of these forms that you see the GUID here for, these are all custom forms that we can create and display to the student. I'm a proponent of custom forms because it allows you to do more than just what's on the PER page or the ACA page or the ref page or the certified page or anything like that. If I were to go to the ACA page here, technically the only thing, because it's a delivered page, I can really change is my instructions, some additional help, and show and hide certain fields. If I were to build a custom form, I have full reign. Anything I can build in a form, I can put on that form. So there have been times with academic history, I've split it up into 2 widgets where I've said, give me all your colleges, give me all your high schools into 2 separate widgets so they can manage it that way. You can manage it where you can just say, give me your high school. You could put logic on it that says, if you're saying you're a transfer, you have to list at least a college. So there's lots of dynamics that you can add into your custom forms. So let's just create a dummy custom form in test. I'm not going to do it in Jackson so they don't yell at me. So when we create a form, I'm just going to pick my TBR test form that I've been messing with. We'll go to edit form. The first thing that we want to do is change our edit properties to Slate hosted application page. What this does is it allows that this page can be used on the application. So our scope is always going to be for our application, Slate hosted application page. Once I create that, within any of my fields, now I have access to all of my application type fields. So any custom application fields I've created, like financial aid package complete in this instance. So some of these and my TBR application term. So any application scope field I can now add to my form. Additionally, you can add in widgets to every form. So in theory, I don't recommend it, I could have one form that literally just lists everything on the application. I don't recommend that because we want them to click through multiple pages. We want them to be able to save the data as they go. If you build one form, kind of the form to rule them all on your application, then as they fill it out, if they hit back or close out their window, the data doesn't store until you hit next or go down on the left-hand side of the links and click to a second page. So I usually recommend think of the application in terms of what is the student providing you at that moment in time. So usually I try to go through the thinking of personal data. So when I'm filling out my application, what's typically the first thing I want to submit? My first name, my last name, my birth date, my email address, my address, information about me as a person. Then what else do I want to collect about the person? Where did you go to school? Collect that information. What type of student are you? Collect that information. So I usually recommend multiple pages. This goes against what most marketing people say. Marketing people like all the information on one location and keep it as short as possible. And that's great for inquiry forms. Applications are very specific and very targeted. So think about when I'm going to go old school. So think about when you get your Manila folder, you open it up and you're flipping through an application. Your first page is all your person data. What am I learning about this person right now? Who are they? Then your second page is, what do you want to do while you're here? I want to be a freshman. I want to study economics. I am, a first generation student, all that stuff. Then what's your next page? Where did you go to school? Tell me about yourself. I went to ABC High School. I went to Matt School of Slate. I went here and I did this. Then what's on your next page? Here's my essay. Or I certify that everything is agreeable and correct, and I'll give you my firstborn child. So then your signature page. So that's usually how I think about an application, rather than just one page that lists literally everything about them. Okay. So I kind of beat that one a lot. So when you're building your form, application Slate hosted or Slate hosted application page, add in all your fields that you want. So let's say we're rebuilding the person form. First name, last name, email, birth date, all this information. As you're building your form, also think about what you want them to change. My example for this is always email address. So let's say we're building out the person scope page. Do you want them to change their email address? My answer is probably no. I usually recommend making the email address a read-only field. There it is. That way, because if you think of the student's progression when they're filling out their app, they go to the /apply page, they fill out that brief form that says first name, last name, email, birth date. They submit that, they get an email back that says this is your PIN number. They go on, they enter their PIN number and their birth date, and then they create their password and they're logged in. Usually that process happens within what, about 5 minutes, 2 minutes, a very short amount of time. A lot of schools then, if you have email address on the person page when you're collecting their personal demographic information, it will allow you to change the email address. So thinking from the student's perspective, do I want to change my email address when I literally just inputted it and got an email back that said, here's your PIN number, and now I can go back and change my email address? That's a little wonky. So I usually make email address read-only because we don't want the student changing their email address. They just gave it to us. We know it works. We don't want them to change it at that point. I would say that for the portal, allow them to change their email address at a later time. Even things like first name and last name and birth date, do we want them to change that information? The answer may be yes, maybe no. Maybe they typed in Matt and they really want to type in Matthew. So we may want them to change their first name and last name. But I'm a big proponent of using read-only fields. That way it shows them the information that's in that field, but it's not allowing them to change certain information. So going back to Jackson here, we created a custom personal background page. And it looks very similar to the standard personal background page. We made it a little bit prettier. I actually had a school too that said, we want to make the application look pretty. So they threw in some instruction pages. I'm going to do this and I'm going to delete it, where they threw in some pictures. They wanted a picture on their page. Cool. So they added a picture. I'm just going to pick up the green jay. So let's say they added a picture of the green jay and put it on their application page. So you can do that. It's all HTML. It's adding pictures on, and they made their application look a little bit prettier. I don't care. I'm not a marketing person, but their marketing person really wanted to do that. So you can make your application look however you want. Make it pretty, ask whatever questions you want. They changed the word of sex to sex assigned at birth. Are you a permanent resident? Rather than just saying permanent resident. Things like that. So it allows you to add and edit whatever you'd like. Like here, we added in some HTML to add in a few definitions of what the different ethnicities are. So it breaks down what each of the definitions are in a pop-up box. So again, you can get as pretty as you'd like, also with any kind of logic within section breaks. So if they say that they're a US citizen, show social security number. If they say that they're not a US citizen, don't show social security number. If they say that they're a US citizen, ask for how many years you've lived in Tennessee. Ask for, I don't know, mother's maiden name, whatever information you want to gather, you can then collect on these pages. So adding custom pages, always beneficial. Here at Jackson, we decided just to use the standard ACA page. It worked for our purposes. So it's one of those, if it works, don't change it. If the standard pages work for you, don't worry about messing with it. One of the things we did at Jackson is we used the standard ref functionality, so collecting references for DE approval from the parents. So we're using the standard functionality to shoot an email to the parents to say, oh, you're instead of acting as a reference, we're shooting it to them saying, can you agree that your son or daughter is allowed to take classes at Jackson for DE? So it's using that standard functionality in a different way within within Slate.
You're using the reference functionality for that, right?
Yes. Yeah, so it makes it a lot simpler. Yes.
So with that being said, like I know for us, we're not in Slate yet, but we have like the parent approval form that's connected with our application. So if the ref, from what I'm hearing, sounds like it would probably be used in lieu of what we currently use as our parent approval form, how could we go back to access that?
Yeah, so because it's using the reference functionality, they fill out a custom form that we create that looks very much like your current parent approval form. That maybe has some check boxes that says, I agree to pay the bill. I agree that my son or daughter is going to get an A or higher, C or higher, or whatever your criteria is. It shoots that to the parent's email address. They fill that out. It saves on that student's application record. And it saves it as a reference form, but we're utilizing that functionality to collect then the parent information form. And we can mask it to say parent approval form and all of that.
No, I think maybe you just,
On the checklist.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
So let me see here.
Because right now ours just say recommendation.
So many complaints about that.
Confusing for the student and it's confusing for the staff.
Or the one
Yeah.
complaining about it.
Yeah, the student.
It's normally.
Who did I just do this for?
What,
Jackson? It was somebody else I just did this for. Was it Columbia? She just left. Wasn't Columbia. Might have been Dyersburg. The only thing I wasn't able to change, and this is kind of where I'm thinking of it, is the button when they submit the reference form, it still says send to recommender instead of send to parent. That's the only place I wasn't able to change it, because if I changed it, it changed all the buttons of save, send to recommender, and cancel to what I wanted it to save. So that's the only place it still says send to recommender. But on the
checklist display label on the material.
It is so we just changed the display label. You see here.
I think that only changes it for the student via the portal and not the checklist on the record.
Let's see, Jackson, let's see if it was Dyersburg. Where's Dyersburg? It has to be this multi-factor, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, we would be fit. Yeah.
But I'm all for using standard functionality in fun and interesting ways. App editor. Not Dyersburg. I think I know who it was. Might have been USI. Yeah, I think it was their CAP program. Yeah, parent and guardian approval. Edit form. Yep, so I have a widget here that pulls in the reference CAP parent approval form. So I created my own widget. And what did I do for their checklist? Here it is. So I created a checklist item with a section called CAP parent approval form. And in the rule behind, I have it looking that says, if a reference does not exist of the type of CAP parent approval, then put this on their checklist.
You have that via a rule.
I have that via a rule because the rule puts on the checklist item.
The reference is usually pre-delivered.
It is, but you can overwrite it. What's that?
Where do you do that? Because I did that, but it had two then, and I couldn't get the system delivered one to not go there.
For the record, this actually does work. We've been using the references for 1.5 years now to get, but yeah, it's, the problem is more what's on the checklist than the actual functionality of it.
Let's touch base maybe later on that. I have to dig, but it's definitely doable.
Sweet. Thank
The only thing again that I wasn't able to do is change on my CAP application, and I'll actually show you this as an example too. On my CAP application, when I go parent approval guardian or parent guardian approval form, and I do Indiana Jones, I've already sent it to him. Back. Albert Alberson in state. I'm not able to say send, it says, still says send to recommender on the regular student side, but that's the only downside to it. So Indiana is actually a good example. Let me go and show you their periods and rounds. So this is an example where I did add, they have some junk in here for some other reasons, but they have undergraduate application, which is their active round. They have graduate. That's another reason to maybe create a separate round. You're not going to deal with graduate. And then they have their CAP application as a separate round. So in reality, outside of this other junk, I would have undergrad application, CAP application, grad application, and then inactive, which is undergraduate inactive. So then I would have just these few. And then they have a direct round URL for their graduate, a direct round URL for their CAP, and their apply / is their undergraduate application. But again, it's a lot less management than having 24, 25, 26, 27. Okay, kind of went off the rails on that one. So application, we talked about periods, rounds. Within the application editor, after you create your forms that you'd like, hitting edit menu, and this is where you can add in any of the custom app pages that you'd like. And they are all under the custom form page. So this is where you can add in your nursing page, your personal background page, your signature page, any custom pages that you'd like. This is where you'd be able to add those. You're also able to change the label. I'd be careful of that. When you name your page, name it what you'd like it to show on the form that the student's going to see. So this person's going to see 01 personal background page, and I might call it personal background as the label. When we're dealing with page keys, this is where we're able to show a certain page based on criteria. So we may only want to show the nursing page if they meet certain criteria. So when we're in application logic, we can build some logic that is a group page key. And let's just say show nursing page. And this is where queries comes into play. We'll build a configurable joins query. And we'll say if their, I don't have the right fields in our test instance, but if their major equals nursing on their application, then show the nursing page. If their major does not equal nursing, it will not show the nursing page. So again, Slate likes to think in the affirmative. So we're saying whatever we tell it to look for here, then build that group page key and utilize that group page key here on that page. So if they're a nursing major, then show the nursing page, which may have an essay or certain other supplemental questions regarding the nursing program. So page keys is going to be beneficial to you. One thing to remember here, you can only add one page key. You can't add multiple. You can't add multiple. So you can only add one page key. Similarly, rounds. So if you're building it and you have certain You can add it in certain rounds. So if we only want to show this page for inactive rounds, I don't know why you would with this new functionality or this new recommendation, but you can show it for certain rounds or certain periods. Again, that's going to be less used. Custom app pages, application creation. Oh, some other things that you'll want to consider when you're building out your application. Standard communications. Most schools will forget about this. It's something that I really try to focus on before we go live. But if you're in, I'm gonna get out of Jackson. So if you go to deliver and hit new mailing and change your, change your folder to system, you're able to see all the standard emails that go out for that round. So if, let's say you have 2 rounds, DE and application for admission, let's say. If there's anything in the /apply, that it applies to all applications in that /apply. Or if you have like /apply DE, let's just say, this would be only for that DE round, they would get these communications. So there are standard communications that you can edit: application creation, application submission, decision notification, recommenders, school reports, all of that. I would always recommend customizing these and making them branded to your institution. Using your templates, things like that, make it pretty. Otherwise, it's very, very simple. It's black text, white background. It looks almost spammy. So I'd be very careful using the standard communications. I would always recommend making them look a little more branded, especially for something like the account creation. Where's that one? Might be the application creation. So when you create your account, the one that you get your PIN number in, you want that to look very branded to your purposes. You want it to say, thank you for creating an account at Jackson State with your header on it. You want maybe your colors, a button. You want it to look very pretty versus just the black text with the white background with a PIN number on it. So I would always recommend clicking on each of these, creating a new email and branding it to your purposes for each of these. And maybe I'll go to Jackson again and show you what we did there. So in Jackson, what we did is, like, here's our application creation email. We made this a little bit prettier. We added a nice picture at the top that says Future Green Jay, and preferred, you have started the application process. It will take approximately 30 minutes to complete. And then from the Office of Admissions, we have this is our register one. This is the one that should have the PIN number. So again, also branded to their personality. Preferred, thank you for creating your account. Complete your login process. This takes them to the login page. Here's your PIN number from the Office of Admissions. And it gives them a contact that if they're having a problem, call this number. I also always recommend anytime you have a phone number or an email address, link it, because most students are opening this on their phone. That way they can just click the button and it calls the number directly. What are some other ones? Let's look at the apply update. So this is the one that says, hey, there's a decision. A status update has been made to your application. Log on your portal to check. Those of you who have worked with me in the past, my standard answer to most student questions is go to your portal. So I usually tell all my people who answer the phone, and I did this when I was an admissions person, if they call and ask a question, help them out as much as you can, but your answer first should be, have you checked your portal? Go to your portal. Because we want to start training the student to think for themselves, act for themselves, go to your portal. Hey, do I have all my materials in? Go to your portal. Do I have a decision yet? Go to your portal. So that same mentality I try to put into the emails, the standard emails, rather than to say, hey, you're missing X, Y, and Z, and we might build that in the missing items email. but you're missing X, Y, and Z, and go to your portal. That way, you're always directing them to go to the portal. So then they can either think for themselves by looking on their portal checklist and say, oh, I am missing X, Y, and Z. They can also update their material themselves by, if they go to their portal, they can upload the material. I'm missing a passport. I'm missing a passport. I'm going to upload it right now. And they can upload it right there on their portal. So I usually tell people the first reaction a lot of the times is, have you checked your portal? Go to your portal, and then also help them out along the way as well. But you'll see that in a lot of my communications. I don't make communications pretty, so I always defer to the marketing people and the institution. But I always try to put a link or a button to say, go to your portal. That way the student's very used to going to their portal, doing self-service.
You said you do allow them to upload most of their items from the portal. Our,
If you allow it.
yeah, so our process feels janky,
Okay.
and it was self-developed, so it probably is a better way. But the only way, because when they upload the portal, when they upload the material to the portal, if it's linked to the checklist, it satisfies the checklist.
Mhm.
But 99% of the time, we want to lay eyes on it first.
Yep.
So janky is to create a second material that's the one they upload. And then we review that. And if it satisfies what we want, we rescope it to the actual material that satisfies the checklist. I have a feeling there's a better way, probably has to do with workflows, but
It's a little wonky.
It is.
So it works. I don't hate it. It is a little wonky though to do it that way. I think workflows make sense. So a lot of times,
the fact that it automatically accepts it like onto the checklist.
I don't want to say I trust students because I don't, because they're going to mess something up.
Yeah, that
99% of the time.
right there, dude. We don't even trust the school counselors, much less the students.
I agree with you. I'm tempted to say I want to trust the student a little bit, to say, if they said that they uploaded their driver's license, it's their driver's license. But I would probably put it through a workflow to say, if a material came in within the past 24 hours, it has to be reviewed for this workflow by a processing staff member and approved or something like that. Maybe they just get a form, or they do something, maybe it's even a material scope field that says reviewed and approved or something like that.
In those 24 hours, it's green check mark on the
It's a
checklist.
check
The
mark.
problem is that means they could get a complete decision, which
Yeah.
means they could get aid. So a lot can happen with a bad transcript or an expired driver's license that would cause a problem.
Yeah,
So I don't like it, like what I did, but if you know of a best practice better way,
I don't love it, but I also don't hate it. It's kind of an interesting process where they upload it as like an unofficial driver's license, and then you change it to official driver's license.
Exactly.
I don't hate it. It's wonky, but I don't hate it. So it might be something to talk through.
Okay.
So yeah, it might be one of those, live with it for a year, see how it works, or allow them to upload it and just see what your failure rate is of people submitting blank documents or junk. And then you realize, okay, we need to do a fix.
The
So
real problem is that a well-intentioned person uploading an expired document that now owes us $6,000 more than they thought that they did,
yes.
because so it only takes like 3 for it to be a high failure rate.
Yeah. I don't hate your process.
because I really want them to be able to utilize that function. It's huge to be
Yeah.
able to upload straight into the portal. It's just dangerous when there's no intervention spot between them uploading and their checklist, thereby their final decision.
I'll throw this out there. I don't love it because I'm just thinking off the top of my head. Instead of having the checklist. Oops. Oh my gosh, now I pinned it. I don't want to unpin. All right, so. Again, just thinking off the top of my head, instead of passport visa being fulfilled by material of passport or visa, just in this example, instead of that, you could have a rule that marks the material as complete if certain criteria exists. So this is getting way off topic, so sorry, everybody. I'm thinking instead of having the material fulfillment, have no material fulfillment, have a rule that says mark passport visa as received if the material passport visa exists and it has a review form, a workflow review form marked as complete or something like that, then mark it as the checklist complete. The only downside to doing that is now you're confusing the student a little bit because they uploaded their passport. It's not checked off. And they're like, oh my God, it's not checked off. What do I do? What do I do? What do I do? So you may even want multiple checklist items, one called like preliminary checklist, passport visa or something like that, and then confirmed passport visa, and have the confirmed passport visa as an internal only, but the unconfirmed one is external or something like that.
I think the upload media spot gives a log of everything that was uploaded. So if there was a message, it's like, thanks for doing this, your document reviewed within however many hours.
Exactly. Communicating with the student that even though you uploaded it, your checklist may not reflect it because it has to go through an official review or something like that. But as long as you're communicating to the student that there is a process, so they're not uploading 50 passports to you and you're like, stop, we're killing BDM over here. Stop loading all this stuff over to us.
Okay,
So
thank you.
We use the material fulfillment, and what we'll do is on our final checkouts, if something isn't what we need, we switch it back to a waiting and use the public comment field to clarify to the student what they actually need to upload.
Have y'all had a timing problem with that? Like the fact that it's green for a little bit?
I haven't noticed any.
We have messaging everywhere that says, just because you've submitted, it doesn't mean that you're done necessarily, or that that's the right thing, because we have.
Are y'all's decisions completing based off of a okay,
We
that's
manually
probably
add the decisions,
okay.
Yes.
Our final decision goes on as soon as.
because we don't process any of the paperwork until we go in to put that decision code on, so.
Okay.
that's what I've seen at law schools too, is even though it's checked off, it has to go through the review process. And in the review process, let's say I uploaded my driver's license, but there's a picture of my dog or something like that. Then the admissions reviewer can go in and unfulfill the checklist item, mark that picture of my dog as a miscellaneous item or something like that, and then have them re-upload it before then the decision's been put on. So that could also be a place to catch it, the review process.
Automated decisions is definitely what's our, not problem, but the thing that's making that an issue.
As much as I love automating things, decisions is one of those things that I kind of reserve for a human to say, yes, accept. Even though they have a heartbeat, they're accepted. Let's let a human put that on.
Thank you.
So, which sounds like what you guys are doing. So, yes, we accept everybody. Everybody can come, but we want a human to say, yes, you can come. So. We got really off the track on that one, so sorry. Couple other things to point out. Application logic, just to kind of talk through building of the whole app. Since an application functions differently than a form. So when you're building a form, lost my forms here. I'll just pick on this one. Maybe not that one. I don't know, I lost my form. But when you're building a form, you have a little checkbox that says required. That box doesn't function on an application. So even though I check the box that says required, I can submit my application even if I don't fill out that field. So that's where application logic comes into play. And this is where you'll put your hard and your soft fails. So this is where I would go through my application after I build it, and I would go through page by page and think, what do I absolutely need somebody to fill out? First name, last name, birthday, email address, at least one address, at least one phone number. And I would build all my logic in here to say, please provide your birthday, please provide a first name, please provide a last name. You'd be surprised if you allow somebody to edit their name, how many people go in and backspace their name and now it's null. So we don't want somebody submitting an app with a null first name or null last name. We would want somebody to have that data. So go through each of your pages, build out hard fails for everything that you know should be required. You need a term, you need a student type, you need an admit type, you need a major, you need a citizenship question, you need a social security number, whatever. Social security number is a bad example, but you need all of those different fields, build them all as hard fails. Soft fails are the recommended ones where you say, hey, we really would like to have this. Those are a good example for a soft fail would be social security number. We would really love to have your social security number, but we cannot require it. We're not going to force you to give you a social, but we would really love you to submit your social. So I usually build that as a soft fail. Additionally, with social security number, I'll build a supplemental form that I'll put on their checklist that says, you didn't provide a social security number. If you'd like to provide one, fill out this form. And on that form, I didn't show you this before, but I'm going to now. On that form, I will use a field called secret. So this field called secret here, I'll use this for social security number, whatever, SS, we'll just call it. And we'll map it to record social security number. This field functions a little bit differently than other fields. You see social in here, there it is. This field functions a little bit differently because typically when a form is filled out, it saves the data on the form. The secret field doesn't save that data behind the scenes. So if I were to query the form, I will never be able to see that person's social security number on the form. It will save in the database because I've mapped it to the field of social security number, but I will never be able to get that data off the form. So typically what I will build is a supplemental form that's just the social security number, and I think I built it here for Jackson. There we go, secure social security number entry form. And you'll see my friend Max here. He filled out this form, but we're not able to see the value that he put in his social security number. But it went on to his record. So I'll typically put this then in as the checklist item that says, hey, we would really like to have your social security number. It's a non-required checklist item. It's not going to hold up your reading process. It's not going to do anything else, but it's a secure way for them to give us the social rather than scanning their social security number card, faxing it in. Now it's sitting on somebody's desk. That scares me, having a social security number floating around. So that's why I usually build this form and put it on as a checklist item for them. I'll show you what that looks like. So I'll build out a checklist item that says social security number form, and it's just tied to the social security number form. It's a form fulfillment. So then they can go in and securely enter the social security number at any time. So I usually build out that one. What didn't I cover so far that maybe you have questions on? So we talked about app forms, custom app forms. We talked about page logic. We talked about the hard fails, soft fails, checklists. Let's go a little bit deeper into checklists. Checklists tie very closely to materials. The way to think about the difference between checklists and materials, and sometimes people get them confused, is materials are all the items we could possibly get. Checklists are the items that we need or we would really like social security number. So that's the way to think of it. You can have multiple materials fulfill one checklist item. So let's think about residency, for example. We need residency docs. That can be fulfilled by your passport, your social security card, not social security card, your passport, your driver's license, your driver's permit. It could be fulfilled by X, Y, and Z. You know your list of things. So that's where we would have a checklist that says we need proof of residency, and it's fulfilled by multiple items. So that's the real difference between checklists and materials. Checklists is the stuff we need. Materials are the stuff that fulfills the stuff we need. With materials, I get people a lot of times that want to have a miscellaneous material. And I have a little heart attack every time somebody says they want a little miscellaneous material because I hate it. I also see the need to have it. So it's one of those, if you offer a miscellaneous, it's just going to be a dumping ground for everything. But sometimes you need a dumping ground because a student sends in a newspaper article because they saved a puppy from a storm drain or something like that. And you're like, I don't care about this, but they sent it in, so I need to load it someplace. So miscellaneous material might be okay with that. Just be careful with your miscellaneous materials. You may even want to split it up and say certificates, newspaper articles, awards, things like that that are a little more descriptive of what people are sending you versus a miscellaneous. So it's okay to have miscellaneous. Just be careful that it doesn't become this big dumping ground of stuff. What else can I tell you with this? Materials, checklists. Behind each checklist is also a rule. This is important to know. When you're building checklists, I would build a group for everything. Now, there's some things that aren't in groups here, and there's a reason why we didn't for Jackson here. But I would, for the most part, build a group for everything, even if it's one thing like selective service and social security number form. The reason for that is when you build your rule, you want to, actually, let me pull open our rules. When you build your rule for checklist items, I'm going to do this one. You want to add a checklist group rather than adding a material of social security number form or a form of social security number form or something like that. The reason for that is if you no longer qualify for the criteria in the query, that falls off your checklist item or your checklist. So if you qualify for it, it shows. If you no longer qualify for it, where your social security number now exists, it now completely falls off your checklist item and you no longer see it. So I would always do a group rather than a material, because if you do a material, you have to have a rule that puts it on, which will be the one that you would create. Then you would also have to have a rule that's the opposite that takes it off if I no longer qualify for it. So a checklist group kind of does that for you by puts it on and takes it off if you no longer qualify. Good example would be international documents, right? So I would have a checklist group that has my rule that says if I'm an international student, we can get into the weirdness of internationals, but if I'm an international student, I get the checklist group of international. Do I have one? International. I get the checklist group of international. Then any checklist items that exist in that international group would populate my checklist. Then maybe for some reason, my app gets updated and I'm no longer an international student. I'm a domestic student. All those international documents now fall off my checklist because I no longer need them. So utilize groups whenever possible. Again, even if it's just one item. Let's see. Checklists, materials, forms. I don't know. What else? What didn't I cover with apps? What are some pain points that you are having with your apps? Lots of pain points, no pain points. Communications. Oh, yes.
This is a weird one.
I like weird ones.
Why is it with Slate, whenever you have a clean version of Slate, you have to go to the Slate template library legacy tool to go activate the XML file?
I don't know. Hopefully you'll never have to do that in prod. It's really only clean slate that you have to do it. I don't know. It's a pain in the neck though.
Because the first time I did it, it took me like a day of just beating my head against a rock to find it on a forms.
Yeah. What you can do in that instance too is if you wanted, you could take out a prod in files.
I saved it to my hard drive.
Yeah, I was going to say, go to your apply/base and just take this code and then put that into your clean
Have
slate.
you heard of Slate planning to move that somewhere more permanent, or what's going to be replacing that tool?
As of now, I haven't heard anything. I know the Slate template library So let me go into a little history here. So the Slate Template Library is still valid even though it says legacy tool. So there are some things in here you may need and or want. So for example, test types. These are all still absolutely valid. Any of the AP tests, your LEP test, your IB test, your SATs, your TOEFLs. Just be careful with SATs. You want to use SAT-R, not SAT-1. These are all still valid. So you can bring these over and they'll bring over the test types. Same thing for things like rules. There are certain rules in here, like application status. I don't typically use this because it's built in the standard base versus the configurable joins, but it's all still somewhat valid. So there's a lot in here. And what we were talking about before is your files. This is your Slate hosted application. This is what you would have to bring over. So it all still somewhat valid, although you're not going to be using it a lot. Slate's eventually going to really phase a lot of this out. Some of it has already phased out, like query bases. But I don't hear of it ever going away anytime soon. So that's one of those things I think it's low on their priority list where it's just like, it's an inconvenience here and there, but it's not hurting the system for the most part when you're building the system. So, but yeah, that's one of those pain in the neck things where it's like, if you do a clean slate environment, you have to add in your apply base Slate hosted application and then make edits. But yeah, unfortunately, I don't have an answer for that one. Other app questions? About a half hour left. Any other questions that maybe we want to go into? Or any kind of weirdness that you're seeing on your, before I go too far, I'm going to get out of Jackson so they don't kill me here. Any other weirdness that you're seeing in your instances or anything that you want me to take a look at or make some quick recommendations on? With the caveat of, I don't know your instances specifically. I don't want to recommend against things you've already built or anything like that. I'll give the little lawyer disclaimer in there. Yes.
We can keep going all day. I guess we have actually. So we would like to have a secondary application for our health sciences programs. We don't want that to be our primary application in our primary application rounds or periods or anything like that. We want its own thing.
Okay.
And at some point we were told we could do that, but I really don't.
So now I get my consulting brain here. So tell me about your process. Do you have to apply first and then after you've been accepted, you get the secondary application?
Yes, it's actually more complicated than that, but yes. So you apply for admission to the college and other people probably have the same thing for nursing programs.
It's got to be nursing or PT.
Yeah, nursing, PT, rad, respiratory, fire. Yeah. So they would apply for admission to the college, take some classes. Once they got to a certain part in their academic journey, they would apply for admission to, we'll stick with nursing. And so we would like them to be able to fill out a real application at that point. We could use a form and may wind up doing that ultimately, but there's just a whole lot more control inside of an application than you can build easily in a form. Especially because there can be checklist items and things like that associated, background checks and immunization records and I don't know, whatever all they collect.
So my first gut instinct is, yes, I think we want to go a form. And it's going to be a special type of a form of app creation. So I showed you the Slate hosted app page form. I want to get my naming correct because I know somebody's going to yell at me later and be like, that's not what it's called. So I showed you before the Slate hosted application page. I think we're going to do for that instance an application creation page. So there are different types of forms in the scope. Let me actually change this back because I want to show you. That's not what I want. Toggle.
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely. Go right ahead.
What is When is it better to use an application creation form versus using like a direct round URL if you want to direct them to somewhere? Because that's also something I was waffling on.
A direct round URL application link utilizes the standard application functionality, where on the left-hand side, you have all the pages, you hit save between each. It also utilizes the standard functionality of having to create your account first and then going in, where you get your PIN number and all of that. With an app creation form, it's bypassing a little bit of that because we can create an app creation form that you don't necessarily have to sign into, or you can sign into after already being logged in. So you can already have an app because you applied 2 years ago, and now you are applying for the nursing program officially.
In case they would have the login set where they log in with the app creation form.
Yep.
But if I wanted to send an application to a student that I don't trust to pick the correct one, I could send them the app creation form and it would put them in the right. I could have them create their login and password and start them on the right path, right? I'm asking these complicated questions too late in the day. These are the things that plague me at night.
With his dual enrollment, with his dual enrollment example, I could see, although I wouldn't really want them to do this on a phone necessarily, but they probably would. You could pop up a QR code that went directly to the dual enrollment application. They could snap it with their phone and fill it out on their phone, kind of thing. And they would never have to decide, do I pick the freshman round or the dual enrollment round? Or you could link from your dual enrollment page directly into that round without giving them the opportunity to pick the wrong thing.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I totally hijacked your.
No, you're good. So they're both kind of tied together. So I think the determination I would go through is, do I want an app, like a real app, or an app creation page? Is how long is my application process? Like the questions I'm asking on the app.
But you can use the app creation page to send them to like a full app, right? You could use that to like capture them and have them log in and make a password, and then they have a full-blown application going. Am I getting crazy? I feel crazy.
So, okay, so I'm gonna give you some examples.
You're driving the Ferrari, not the Pinto.
Yeah, you're driving you're like on a Maserati. You're kind of even past the Ferrari at this
It's not even
point.
for an application, it's for a scholarship.
Oh, then let's go a different route with that. Okay, so for your purposes, in 2023, they apply for admission to the college. They're admitted in general studies, something like that. Now they've met their requirements. They want to apply for the nursing program. So I think for that purpose, I would do an app creation page and require secure link login, all of that. I would then take their app, put it on their portal, so their application portal that they've already created, maybe as a link that says you now qualify for, and I'm kind of tying this into student success, but you now qualify to apply to the nursing program, click here. So they then click there, it opens up an app, and on your app creation page, you'd want some criteria hidden, some fields hidden. So you'd want their round hidden, you'd want their maybe major hidden, things like that, to say you're applying to the nursing program, you're applying in the active application round. We can get into, do we want to create a new round? Do we not want to create a new round? Things like that. By them submitting that application creation form, they would get a new tab on their record because it's a new round. So they'd get that with their term and their major and all of that. And then they could potentially then go through a separate workflow called like nursing admittance workflow or something like that. So I think an application form in that sense would make the most sense rather than them having a full application. Because we're not going to really need to know their address and their name and all of that other stuff. They've already filled that out. So we're just going to ask them to sign in and give us the information that we need. What is your RN license number? How many years of shadowing a nurse did you do? And well, whatever other questions. Here's your essay upload and upload your nursing essay. So then we're going to ask that information. It's going to be a very quick app. I think very similar for a scholarship app. So let's go scholarship app process. I've been admitted to the college, general admission, business, whatever. I've been admitted. Now maybe on my portal, I get different scholarships that I qualify for. So you know a little bit about me. You know that I'm interested in business. I have a 3.8 GPA and I have 72 hours of community service or something like that. So now maybe the community service app pops up, the business scholarship app pops up, and the high GPA scholarship app pops up. So scholarships that apply to me are now showing on my portal. So then I can click. Actually, I'm going to revise that and say it might just be application scoped. On then my portal, I'll click my application scoped form, which will tie to my application because now I'm tying this scholarship app to my 2024 application.
But what if?
There's always.
If there are not students with an application who don't have a portal because these aren't actual TBR students, they're random people in a grant program that we're just managing in our student success database. Yeah, come get in this Maserati with me.
Why are you hosting them in your instance if they're not?
I got a lot of questions too.
So I think I have a lot of questions with that. I think we have to dig into that deal.
Okay.
That might be a one-on-one kind of deal. Put that on your list with that one. But that one might be a little wonky that we might need to figure out. But for the typical process, let's say they're a nursing applicant, and now they qualify for the nursing. I think that's where I would create an application creation page. Then on the student's record, they would get a new tab. So they have their undergrad app from, let's say, 2023. They would get a new tab that says nursing app for 2025 and go through the nursing process of review. And then on that app, you would have rules that would say, you need these checklist items, you need an updated transcript, you need an essay, you need shadowing hours, whatever. So I think I would go with the application creation page because it's a quick app at that point versus an actual full app. I think that's the way I would do it. Plus, it's also limiting it to certain students getting that. If you do it as a direct round, could a student potentially get to it? Yes, where I could send it to my best friend. They can now fill out this application, but they don't really qualify for it because they shouldn't have gotten the link in the first place. Versus if it's on my portal, you could lock it down where I have to log in, I have to meet certain criteria to then even view this application. But I think that's the route I would go. Sorry, there's a lot involved with that. So there are application scoped forms that you can create. The biggest thing when creating an application, you need to just think about what are the minimum criteria for an application. Minimum criteria would be around, a period, what term they're interested in coming in, any of the custom application scope fields, things like that. So not getting really in the weeds, but totally valid, but very in the weeds.
I can shove it back.
Scholarships, that's also very in the weeds as well. But one of the things I would recommend, especially for scholarships, doesn't fit your use case, but I would always filter the scholarships based on criteria we already know about them. We don't want to send a student a nursing scholarship application form when they're a business student. Like, there's no need to show that. So the old way of doing it is let's put links to PDFs on our website for all the scholarships that are possibly out there. With Slate, because we know information about the student, we know their major, we know their term, we know their GPA, their current GPA, if you're using student success, we know their high school GPA, we know community service hours if we ask that question, we know information about them, we're able to customize what we show to the students based on what we already know about them. So let's not show the business student the nursing scholarship, because you're going to get a nursing scholarship from that student. It's going to be a waste of your time to read that. So let's filter based on what we already know about that student. Another thing you can do, I think I showed this before, is we can do on a form, whether it's person scoped or app scoped. If we send this URL to somebody in an email, we can append their person GUID on the back of it. I think it's this URL, and it would be and person ID equals GUID. So we can append their GUID on the back. So when they sign in, they're not having to fill out information we already know about them. So anytime you send an inquiry form, an event form, anything like that to a specific student and say, we want information about you, we're not asking you to fill out information again that we already know about the person. Yes.
Yeah, I have a very basic question. So when we're sending all these URLs, can it be single sign-on? So if I'm already logged into, let's say, another portal on campus and I send you over to that URL, is it just going to log me in? So like I'm a nursing student. That was a year ago. I did all my application to the college and everything. If I go over here and I want to fill out a form, if I send them that, can they just use their college login?
Yes. So yes, it can be single sign-on. We just need to set up the single sign-on for the accepted students. But yeah, that's very popular, especially for student success. We're going to use single sign-on for them once they reach a certain point. Usually it's at the point of registration or at the point of acceptance. We can toggle back and forth between what that criteria is, but then send their single sign-on information to Slate and then utilize single sign-on if that exists. Awesome. So yeah, absolutely. Yes.
One other question is if you are sending out the custom URL and in the query string, you've got that GUID on there. If you send that out, if they copy it and send that to their friend, is that pulling personal information?
If you have personal information shown on that form.
So yes.
So potentially, I won't say yes, I'll say potentially. So for example, if I send a direct round URL with the person's GUID on it, and the questions I'm asking on that app are, what's your dog's name, what's your shoe size, and are you left-handed or something like that, I'm not getting any information, but information is it's tying back to me as the person. So I'm not really showing information, but it's tying to me as the person. So if I send that to my friend finds out that he's left-handed, but I'm really right-handed, I come in as left-handed. If you have on the form in a read-only field, first name, last name, birth date, all of that, then yes, they would be able to see that information. So that's just where I'd be careful of what you're showing versus what you're collecting. Other questions? I like that you guys want to get in the weeds with things. That's exciting and fun. I lost my schedule. Oh boy, all I want is my schedule. Where? Stop 4. That's where I put it.
It's still linked back.
All right, so that kind of ties up today. Excuse me. That ties up today. We talked about periods, rounds, application forms, materials, checklists. So we talked about that. Tomorrow, start around 8:30. We'll kind of do a quick recap of today. We'll go over the schedule again. And then around 8:30 to 8:45-ish, we'll get into the advanced querying. So we'll kind of take what we learned today about querying, take it to the next level, do some joins, show you how to do some basic joins. If we really want, we'll get kind of in the weeds with some subquery joins. Maybe we'll get into an independent subquery if we feel really wild. We'll jump into query libraries, maybe query templates, show you how to create some of those. So then you can utilize those elsewhere in your instances to help the people downstream. And then we'll jump into reports. So how to create a basic report, what are parts of a report, how to schedule a report, things like that. So tomorrow's just going to be query overload in the morning and reports. We'll also jump in, if you'd like, if we have some extra time, we can jump into Voyager. So I can show you Voyager, how to set that up, what Voyager looks like, all of that. So we can jump into that too. Tomorrow afternoon, we'll jump into Deliver. So how to send mass mailings and texts. So we'll set that up or show you that setup. Some options of sending emails. Bless you. And then we'll jump into event scheduler and trips later in the afternoon. But a lot of this builds upon itself. So if you know how to do queries, which you now hopefully know how to do a basic query, once you know how to do an advanced query, you'll be able to do reports. If you know how to do queries, you'll be able to do deliver. And if you're able to do queries and deliver, you'll be able to do events, scheduler, and trips. So everything kind of builds upon what we talked about today and what we'll talk about tomorrow morning. So tomorrow is going to be kind of a query heavy day.
Are you going to show us how to do like custom reports and dashboard on our home slate, like the super cool one I saw on your page? And is that under reports or is that under dashboards on the last day?
It's kind of under queries and reports. I can show you that tomorrow. That'll be fine. Let me show you kind of what, just for the.
Your
Just
20 instances.
This is my problem. I get way too many screens and way too many views and all that open.
Sure, like that exact thing is what, yes, I have been asked about building something like that. So
Yes.
what is this called?
So what I have here, this is a dashboard portal.
Yeah.
So what I have here is a portal actually, and it has a home screen and it also has like data tables where I can search for students.
Yeah.
And I can go to like a unique hyperlink and click on a student directly from my report and see information about that student. So this is a dashboard which has queries and reports built into that portal. So this is like.
Do I build that in sports? Okay.
Yeah, so I can show you kind of the basics of it. This is really advanced. That's my main page. This is really advanced, but you could put just reports on your regular dashboard. And then the other dashboards that I'll end up showing are the person dashboard up here, editing this, and editing the application dashboard.
That specific one on your website, you call that world dashboard? That's exactly what it was. I didn't know what it was called.
This is like souped up for well,
Yeah, wow.
so.
I can, yeah, I'm ready to do that. I just don't know how to save a quick query. So that's about where I'm at.
So, yeah, I'll show you at least how to put a query on your dashboard here. So I'll show you how to.
Already ready to go now.
All right, well, I'll hang around for a little bit. Obviously, if you have questions, let me know.